Job Hazard Analysis, JHA. Introduction. Job Hazard Analysis, JHA. Welcome to this training video on Job Hazard Analysis or JHA. During this video we'll discuss what a hazard is, what a job hazard analysis is, and why it is important. And we'll provide you with a fairly detailed process of how to conduct a job hazard analysis. We'll also walk you through a couple of sample JHA. This training video is intended primarily for employers, foremen, and supervisors, but we encourage employees to use the information as well to analyze their own jobs and recognize workplace hazards so they can report them. Objectives. Know what a hazard is. Understand what a job hazard analysis, JHA. Know why a JHA is important. Know how to conduct a JHA. Be able to identify several common hazards. Be able to identify several control measures. Know how to use a JHA. Know where to find help. What is a hazard? A hazard is a potential for harm. In practical terms, a hazard often is associated with a condition or activity that, if left uncontrolled, can result in an injury or illness. Later in the video we'll present a list of common hazards and descriptions. Identifying hazards and eliminating or controlling them as early as possible will help prevent injuries and illnesses. What is a job hazard analysis? A job hazard analysis is a technique that focuses on job tasks as a way to identify hazards before they occur. It focuses on the relationship between the worker, the task, the tools, and the work environment. Ideally, after you identify uncontrolled hazards, you will take steps to eliminate or reduce them to an acceptable risk level. Job hazard analysis is also commonly referred to as a job safety analysis or JSA. They are essentially the same tool. Importance of a job hazard analysis. Many workers are injured and killed at the workplace. Safety and health can add value to your business, your job, and your life. You can help prevent workplace injuries and illnesses by looking at your workplace operations, establishing proper job procedures, and ensuring that all employees are trained properly. One of the best ways to determine and establish proper work procedures is to conduct a job hazard analysis. A job hazard analysis is one component of the larger commitment of a safety and health management system. Safety tip. The order of precedence and effectiveness of hazard control is the following. 1. Engineering controls. 2. Administrative controls. 3. Personal protective equipment. Value of a job hazard analysis. Supervisors can use the findings of a job hazard analysis to eliminate and prevent hazards in their workplaces. This is likely to result in fewer worker injuries and illnesses, safer, more effective work methods, reduced workers' compensation costs, and increased worker productivity. The analysis also can be a valuable tool for training new employees in the steps required to perform their jobs safely. For a job hazard analysis to be effective, management must demonstrate its commitment to safety and health and follow through to correct any uncontrolled hazards identified. Otherwise, management will lose credibility and employees may hesitate to go to management when dangerous conditions threaten them. What jobs are appropriate for a JHA? A job hazard analysis can be conducted on many jobs in your workplace. Priority should go to the following types of jobs. Jobs with the highest injury or illness rates. Jobs with the potential to cause severe or disabling injuries or illness, even if there is no history of previous accidents. Jobs in which one simple human error could lead to a severe accident or injury. Jobs that are new to your operation or have undergone changes in processes and procedures. Jobs complex enough to require written instructions. Conducting a job hazard analysis. Where do I begin? Involve your employees. It is very important to involve your employees in the hazard analysis process. They have a unique understanding of the job, and this knowledge is invaluable for finding hazards. Involving employees will help minimize oversights, ensure a quality analysis, and get workers to buy into the solutions, because they will share ownership in their safety and health program. Review your accident history. Review with your employees your worksite's history of accidents and occupational illnesses that needed treatment, losses that required repair or replacement, and any near misses, events in which an accident or loss did not occur, but could have. These events are indicators that the existing hazard controls, if any, may not be adequate and deserve more scrutiny. Conduct a preliminary job review. Discuss with your employees the hazards they know exist in their current work and surroundings. Brainstorm with them for ideas to eliminate or control those hazards. If any hazards exist that pose an immediate danger to an employee's life or health, take immediate action to protect the worker. Any problems that can be corrected easily should be corrected as soon as possible. Do not wait to complete your job hazard analysis. This will demonstrate your commitment to safety and health and enable you to focus on the hazards and jobs that need more study because of their complexity. For those hazards determined to present unacceptable risks, evaluate types of hazard controls for assistance in identification of common hazards. List, rank, and set priorities for hazardous jobs. List jobs with hazards that present unacceptable risks, based on those most likely to occur, and with the most severe consequences. These jobs should be your first priority for analysis. Outline the steps or tasks. Nearly every job can be broken down into job tasks or steps. When beginning a job hazard analysis, watch the employee perform the job, and list each step as the worker takes it. Be sure to record enough information to describe each job action without getting overly detailed. Avoid making the breakdown of steps so detailed that it becomes unnecessarily long, or so broad that it does not include basic steps. You may find it valuable to get input from other workers who have performed the same job. Later, review the job steps with the employee to make sure you have not omitted something. Point out that you are evaluating the job itself, not the employee's job performance. Include the employee in all phases of the analysis, from reviewing the job steps and procedures, to discussing and controlled hazards, and recommended solutions. Safety tip. Sometimes, in conducting a job hazard analysis, it may be helpful to photograph or videotape the worker performing the job. These visual records can be handy references when doing a more detailed analysis of the work. How do I identify workplace hazards? A job hazard analysis is an exercise in detective work. Your goal is to discover the following. What can go wrong? What are the consequences? How could it arise? What are other contributing factors? How likely is it that the hazard will occur? To make your job hazard analysis useful, document the answers to these questions in a consistent manner. Describing the hazard in this way helps to ensure that your efforts to eliminate the hazard and implement hazard controls help target the most important contributors to the hazard. Good hazard scenarios describe where it is happening, environment, who or what it is happening to, exposure, what precipitates the hazard, trigger, the outcome that would occur should it happen, consequence, any other contributing factors. Rarely is a hazard a simple case of one singular cause, resulting in one singular effect. More frequently, many contributing factors tend to line up in a certain way to create the hazard. Here is an example of a hazard scenario. In the metal shop, environment, while clearing a snag, trigger, a worker's hand, exposure, comes into contact with a rotating pulley. It pulls his hand into the machine and quickly mangles his fingers. Consequences. Performing the analysis. To perform a job hazard analysis, you will need to ask some questions. What can go wrong? The worker's hand could come into contact with a rotating object that catches it and pulls it into the machine. What are the consequences? The worker could receive a severe injury and lose fingers and hands. How could it happen? The accident could happen as a result of the worker trying to clear a snag during operations, or as part of a maintenance activity while the pulley is operating. Obviously, this hazard scenario could not occur if the pulley is not rotating. What are other contributing factors? This hazard occurs very quickly. It does not give the worker much opportunity to recover or prevent it once his hand comes into contact with the pulley. This is an important factor because it helps you determine the severity and likelihood of an accident when selecting appropriate hazard controls. Unfortunately, experience has shown that training is not very effective in hazard control when triggering events happen rapidly because humans can react only so quickly. Performing the analysis. How likely is it that the hazard will occur? This determination requires some judgment. If there have been near misses or actual cases, then the likelihood of a recurrence would be considered high. If the pulley is exposed and easily accessible, that also is a consideration. In the example, the likelihood that the hazard will occur is high because there is no guard preventing contact and the operation is performed while the machine is running. By following the steps in this example, you can organize your hazard analysis activities. Hazard control measures. Use of one hazard control method over another higher in the control precedence may be appropriate for providing interim protection until the hazard is abated permanently. In reality, if the hazard cannot be eliminated entirely, the adopted control measures will likely be a combination of all three items, instituted simultaneously. Risk assessment code. Okay. We've gone over the process for conducting a simple job hazard analysis. Now let's take a look at a method that adds a little complexity to the process, but will refine the JHA a little further. We'll do this by applying a risk assessment code, or RAC, to the process. The risk assessment code is used to evaluate both the severity of a hazardous event and the probability that a hazardous event will occur. Initial RAC. For each hazard identified, determine the initial RAC. Note, the same process applies for the interim and final RAC. This is a qualitative assessment of each hazard to determine the level of risk, high, medium, or low. This gives us a means to prioritize our actions. A risk ranked as high will require more urgent action than one that is rated low. Interim and final RAC. You'll also want to develop interim and final RACs in the process. Interim RAC is based on interim protective measures put in place until the final corrective action is taken. Final RAC is based on completion of all mitigation measures including long-term items. This process allows us to determine how effective our interim and final controls are at reducing risk. Next I will show the process to go through to determine a RAC for each identified hazard. Severity of hazardous event. As noted, the first step in determining the initial RAC is to determine the worst case credible outcome of a mishap that could result from the hazard identified. This takes some judgment. However, if the same person or persons are assigning RACs for a given JHA, the results will tend to be consistent and will produce the results that is required. Let's look at the table, see how this works. Probability of hazardous event. The next step in determining the RAC is to estimate the probability of occurrence of the hazardous event, which is the likelihood that an identified hazard will result in a mishap, based on an assessment of such factors as location, exposure in terms of cycles or hours of operation, and affected population. In other words, how likely is it that the identified hazard will result in the worst case credible outcome for this hazard. Again, let's look at the next table. Risk assessment matrix. Risk assessment matrix. High risks are raised to management's attention, and corrective actions are taken immediately. On issues requiring long-term corrections, the hazard or hazards are abated by an interim method. Medium risks are reported in the established systems, and interim corrective actions instituted until the issues are corrected. Low risks are reported in the established system, and corrective actions are taken as resources permit. Using a job hazard analysis. How do I correct or prevent hazards? After reviewing your list of hazards with the employee, consider what control methods will eliminate or reduce them. The most effective controls are engineering controls that physically change a machine or work environment to prevent employee exposure to the hazard. The more reliable or less likely a hazard control can be circumvented, the better. If this is not feasible, administrative controls may be appropriate. This may involve changing how employees do their jobs. Short and long-term controls. Hazard or mitigation controls may be short and or long-term. Short-term controls can be implemented immediately. For instance, PPE Long-term controls require more time to implement. For instance, redesign the work environment to eliminate the hazard. Frequently short and long-term controls are used. Catastrophic events should never occur as the result of a single failure. Discuss your recommendations with all employees who perform the job and consider their responses carefully. If you plan to introduce new or modified job procedures, be sure they understand what they are required to do and the reasons for the changes. What else do I need to know before starting a JHA? The job procedures discussed in this video are for illustration only and do not necessarily include all the steps, hazards, and protections that apply to your industry. When conducting your own job safety analysis, be sure to consult the OSHA standards for your industry. Compliance with these standards is mandatory, and by incorporating their requirements in your job hazard analysis, you can be sure that your health and safety program meets federal standards, OSHA standards and regulations. Technical information are available online at www.osha.gov. Why should I review my JHA? Periodically reviewing your job hazard analysis ensures that it remains current and continues to help reduce workplace accidents and injuries. Even if the job has not changed, it is possible that during the review process you will identify hazards that were not identified in the initial analysis. Why should I review my JHA? It is particularly important to review your job hazard analysis if an illness or injury occurs on a specific job. Based on the circumstances, you may determine that you need to change the job procedure to prevent similar incidents in the future. If an employee's failure to follow proper job procedures results in a close call, discuss the situation with all employees who perform the job and remind them of proper procedures. Anytime you revise a job hazard analysis, it is important to train all employees affected by the changes in the new job methods, procedures, or protective measures adopted. When is it appropriate to hire a professional to conduct a JHA? If your employees are involved in many different or complex processes, you need professional help conducting your job hazard analyses. Sources of help include your insurance company, the local fire department, and private consultants with safety and health expertise. In addition, OSHA offers assistance through its regional and area offices and consultation services. Use the same link to the OSHA document, which provides contact numbers near the end of the publication. www.osha.gov/publications/OSHA3071.html. Even when you receive outside help, it is important that you and your employees remain involved in the process of identifying and correcting hazards. Because you are on the work site every day and most likely to encounter these hazards, new circumstances, and a recombination of existing circumstances may cause old hazards to reappear and new hazards to appear. In addition, you and your employees must be ready and able to implement whatever hazard elimination or control measures a professional consultant recommends. Final words. Review and approval process. Before we finish up, let's cover a last few items. There should be a review and approval process in place for JHA. Be sure to record who originally developed the JHA. JHA should be reviewed by someone who was not involved in the development. The person who performed the review should be listed. Finally, an approval signature must be added to denote that this is the official JHA for this job. Pitfalls to avoid. JHA can sometimes be difficult to sell to management. There are thousands of jobs performed and not enough resources to perform this type of analysis for all jobs. Answer: get started and cover them over time. Properly defining the job and job steps can be difficult and time consuming. Again, get started. You can always revise and divide or combine your initial jobs. Defining a complex job in 2 or 3 steps may not work. Add enough steps to get the job done. Completing a JHA just to meet a requirement and then never using it is a waste of time. Make sure there is enough follow-up to ensure implementation. Establishing a requirement with no oversight to ensure that the expectation is met is another pitfall to avoid. Manage the process to ensure this doesn't happen. Completion of a JHA and never reviewing or revising. Remember, jobs can change over time. Constant review is a must. Thank you. Feel free to share this video on Facebook, Twitter, Google Groups, and WhatsApp. You can also share it with your professional network on LinkedIn. If you like this video, hit the like icon. To support us, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for updates. Thanks for watching.